Any attempt to divide and rule by this government is absolutely being squashed by the people who work in the health service, who are not going to let them pick off one group of workers and let them be beaten only to come for the next of us, because that is definitely what this government wants to do. They have already said to the pay review body for the Agenda for Change group, which is everybody else in the health service apart from doctors and dentists, they have already said their evidence from the government was, we do not believe there should be any unsociable hours payments whatsoever. We want more people to work unsocially, and we want to pay them not one penny. They believe we live in a 24-hour, 7-day society and that nothing is antisocial. So if you work at 3 o'clock in the morning, saving somebody's life, or holding somebody's hand at the last end of their life, or wiping the floor to make sure that there isn't a bug there so that you don't catch an infection, that's not important to them. If you lose your own life, and that people who work nights on average lose between 8 and 15 years life expectancy because it messes up your own body if you do some days on days and some days on nights so that you don't know what you're doing. You get a higher chance of cancer, you have a higher chance of mental health, you have a higher chance of heart disease. Unsocial hours wreck your health, never mind the health of the people that you work with. And the contracts that they want junior doctors to have imposed on them now forces them not to do the 37.5 hours that the rest of us to do, but to do more and more unsocial hours, including lots in 1 week without any penalty to the hospitals whatsoever, who once they're not penalised will certainly be making health workers do it. And I have to say that patients deserve better than that, and I think health workers deserve better than that too. One of the many problems that are facing all the public services at the moment. We now have a government that are choosing to use an economic crisis that has nothing to do with spending more money in the public services and was everything to do with the banks playing sort of money games, which when they made money they kept the profits, and when they lost money they wanted us to bail them out. That's the cause of the problem of the economic crisis at the moment, and they're using that crisis to undo the welfare state that was created in 1945 by the Labour government. Worse, and it is getting worse, then for me and you, that's a bad thing, because we depend on the health service. But for the majority of Tory MPs and their mates, there is always a private health care that they can afford, because they're millionaires and billionaires, and they don't rely on it in the way that the 99% of us do. And I think that's why this is about a political battle. This is about a decision about what sort of world do we want to live in, what sort of country do we want to live in. Another 5 years of austerity will mean the end of the health service. There will be a £35 billion less spent per year on the health service if the Tories get away with their plans. And already you see chief executives, people not known for their left-wing traditions, saying it is unsustainable to run the health service on the budgets that you have. And Emma's right, they could get rid of the market and that would put £23 billion back. It isn't even just that we need money, partly we need them to stop wasting it on all the contracting and the bidding and the tendering and all the accountants and all the billing and all the checking and all the nonsense that goes on. That would save £23 billion, which wouldn't actually cost us any more. But it's more than that. It's like, what sort of government says that the priority is tax cuts for the rich and more nuclear weapons when we can't afford tax cuts? They're trying to tell us it's not a problem of economics, it's a problem of migrant workers. Somehow the divide and rule technique. If we didn't have migrant workers, we could afford the health service, we could afford the schools, there'd be enough houses, it wouldn't be the problem that it is today. Well, somebody reminded me earlier, you are more likely to be treated by a migrant worker than you are to be competing for health care. doctors were not born in this country, and 40% of NHS nurses in England were not born in this country. Without migrant workers, our health service would collapse tomorrow, and I think we should be welcoming them into this country. We should be saying you're part of the solution, not part of the problem. It's big business and the privateers that need to be kicked out, not migrants. Hopeful, because I think the fact that this number of people have come out on a rainy Manchester night in November is indicative of a bit of a change that I think is going on in this country. I think there are more and more people who know if you do nothing, it is going to get worse. It won't just stand still, it will get worse. And that's why more and more people are standing up and doing something. And I think the Tories are not a strong government. They have a small majority. Only 24% of the electorate voted for them. They have been forced into retreats already. They would have liked to have a vote to bomb Syria, to create more death and destruction around the world and more instability. They would have liked to have voted through tax credit cuts so that the very poorest workers in this country would be bearing the burden of increased taxes rather than the very rich. And they've been forced back on those because they could not get away with it. There is a growing opposition to what they're doing. And I think our job has to be to say to the people who aren't here tonight but who support the doctors, I don't believe they're not popular. I don't even believe that the papers don't support them. If I was a newspaper editor and I wanted to sell papers, I would support the doctors because that would sell your papers. And I think we have a responsibility to begin to organise that opposition, because one of the things the Tories want to do, they want to stop us fighting back. I'm in a union, and if the trade union bill goes through, they want to make it virtually impossible for me to have a legal strike to be able to defend what we do. And people are right about the crocodile tears that Tories shed if you go on strike. I'm a nurse and I've been on strike actually quite a few times. Why? Because they've attacked my services quite a few times, and I think you have to stand up and defend them. There are 2,500 mental health beds that have closed in England. These are people who would be cared for by nurses, doctors, porters, domestics and everybody else. Those people are on permanent strike because the Tories closed their wards without one single crocodile tear. So don't come whinging to us when we stand on picket lines in order to stop the closures, to stop the cuts, to stop the privatisations and to stop making our lives a misery. I think we can win this, and I think if we do win it, it is a massive dent in the whole austerity package, and hopefully it's the beginning of the end of the Tory government.